To truly understand the horror that is Vel'Koz, one must first know of the Watchers, and how they were bound to the mortal realm. Screaming into existence with the birth of the universe, a manifestation of the unknowable nothingness and a force of unending hunger formed on the outskirts of reality. This infinite, dark, timeless abyss is known to the scholars of Runeterra as the Void. Even in this eternal nothingness, life found a way, and beings later referred to as the Watchers inhabited the Void. These creatures stumbled across portals or visions of existence. Although their motives are unknown to all, these masters of the Void have brought with them nothing but death and destruction through their actions. Between the eras of gods and civilization, the bravest of the Watchers attempted to hurl themselves into the mortal realm, only to be horribly disoriented by the sudden shift between the abyss and the corporeal linear nature of reality. In an instant there was time and heat and pain, all concepts that were completely unknown to the inhabitants of the Void. Then there was only cold. The way was shut, and dozens of the Watchers were trapped in space between two realms, frozen in the moment of transition. Over time, these frozen Watchers grew a slight understanding on how to control small aspects of the material realm. From the crude matter that they were able to manipulate, they began shaping, corrupting, and imbuing it with consciousness. These constructs were the first of the Voidborn, and would be the Watchers' agents and avatars, to observe and gather information about the world of Runeterra, in hopes to one day discover the secrets that will break them free of their eternal prison. Among these creations, one stands apart, as perhaps the oldest surviving Voidborn, certainly existing the longest outside of the Abyss. He has been known by countless names to those unfortunate enough to encounter him. Thousands of years ago, primitive cultures of ancient Runeterra feared the devil Vel'Koz, who stepped forth from the underworld to steal the dreams of wise men. Though his name has no literal translation in modern tongue, it equates roughly as to understand by unmaking. His insatiable hunger for knowledge has led Vel'Koz across the world to its highest peaks and darkest depths. Cunning and methodical, he has quietly watched entire civilizations rise, stagnate, and decay, spent centuries combing the ocean floor for its secrets, even scrying the movements of the stars in the heavens above. He carries all of his knowledge back to the great rifts in the fabric of Runeterra, so that the Watchers might know what he knows. He will annihilate without hesitation any mortal who stands in his path, for the Void is eternal, and it will consume us all. From Vel'Koz's story alone, we have a plethora of options we could use to tie him into our own Dungeons & Dragons settings. However, his powers and abilities are not explained much besides his hunger for knowledge through destruction and decomposition. The video game version of Vel'Koz has the power to fire missiles of dark plasma, open small rifts to the Void, and disintegrate most known materials found on Runeterra. These alien powers, mixed with his appearance, reminds me heavily of another Dungeons & Dragons creature, that being the Beholder. Beholders, for some of you that are unaware, are a mess of floating fleshy eyeballs that can do a variety of things, from canceling all magic in front of the Beholder, to charming people, to full-on disintegration. So before we get into Vel'Koz's statistics and powers, you could easily use a Beholder stat block instead of my own iteration of Vel'Koz if you prefer. But diving into this version of Vel'Koz, I decided to base a majority of his statistics off of the Beholder stat block. The only notable differences I have made was I increased his intelligence and wisdom to be that of an ancient, knowledge-hungry alien. I have also decided to reduce his charisma stat because my version of Vel'Koz rarely takes the diplomatic route and has no need for servants and thralls. I also decided to give my Vel'Koz proficiency in the Arcana and Insight skills to reinforce this idea of a super-intelligent alien. For his first special ability, I have given Vel'Koz his passive ability from League of Legends, Organic Destruction and Research. This ability allows Vel'Koz to probe and gather information about the creatures he is fighting, allowing him to more easily spot their weaknesses and exploit them. Whenever Vel'Koz damages a creature with 3 or more attacks and/or abilities, that creature becomes researched. A researched creature takes an additional 3d8 force damage from Vel'Koz's attacks, as well as his attacks ignore the resistances of creatures with the researched condition. You should probably think of a way to describe this to your players so that Vel'Koz doesn't randomly start doing a ton of extra damage and ignoring resistances out of nowhere. Personally, I would tell my players that with every attack Vel'Koz hits you with, you begin to feel strange and almost observed. You feel as if he's probing your defenses and gathering information. This way, your players understand that there's more to his attacks than meet the eye. Pun intended. Also, for those of you who think this ability might be too strong or unbalanced, you could easily change this or reward the players for trying to stop his ability, even if they don't know exactly what he is doing. For example, maybe your players try to protect themselves with spells like Protection from Good and Evil, or one of the Restoration spells. You could reward them by removing one of the Void marks or the researched condition. It's the DM's choice. Moving on to his attacks, we have given him a fairly weak multi-attack with his tentacle beams. This allows him to do 12 force damage on average with them during his turn. The next attack we have given him is his Plasma Fission ability. Vel'Koz fires a plasma bolt that damages the first thing it hits. Once this attack hits something, reaches its maximum range, or Vel'Koz can manipulate it preemptively, the bolt of plasma splits into two, launching these additional bolts in opposite directions at a 90-degree angle. Based on my description, it may sound a little confusing, so I will put something on the screen to clarify what I mean. Vel'Koz can use this attack to not only deal serious damage at range, but he can also manipulate these plasma bolts to potentially damage creatures behind cover. This ability alone will make it extremely difficult for the party of adventurers to position correctly, as well as give Vel'Koz a large amount of control over the battlefield. Now, many of those who are familiar with Vel'Koz know that his most powerful, and arguably his most iconic ability, is his Lifeform Disintegration Ray. Vel'Koz can exert a large beam of energy from his body, dealing massive damage to any creature unfortunate enough to be standing in front of him. The ability I have used here is a direct copy of the disintegration beam that a beholder can use, allowing Vel'Koz to deal 54 force damage on average to a creature struck by this attack, but a researched creature will end up taking 67 force damage instead. This ability also turns any creature it drops to 0 hit points into dust, and destroys physical or magical barriers. This differs slightly from the video game version of this ability, where Vel'Koz becomes immobile while channeling this laser, and he can also direct and move the laser on a small axis. The reason I decided not to allow Vel'Koz to move this death beam is because I had a hard time describing it for the purposes of a grid and battlefield mechanics, as well as I thought that him being able to deal that much damage to several different creatures at once seemed a little unfair. Again, this iteration is simply my opinion. I encourage all DMs to throw any kind of death beam at their players and let me know how it goes in the comments. Lastly, we have his legendary actions. I have made it so that Vel'Koz can make up to 3 extra tentacle beam attacks per round, or 1 extra plasma fissure per round. However, I have given Vel'Koz one more unique attack as his 2-cost legendary action. In League of Legends, Vel'Koz is able to tear open small portals or pockets of void energy, so I thought it would be useful and unique if my Vel'Koz could do a similar thing. My Vel'Koz is able to produce these corrupting rifts anywhere he can see up to 120 feet away. These void rifts take up a 30-foot by 10-foot area and also become difficult terrain. They damage any creature who ends their turn inside of them, and then these rifts disappear at the beginning of his next turn. This feature gives Vel'Koz the ability to slow down any aggressors who may be trying to approach him, and potentially give him an easier way to get damage on a target he wants to research. That about wraps up my Vel'Koz. What did you think of my iteration of him, and how would you make yours differently? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget, if you stare long enough into the void will stare back into you. As always, I leave the link to the monster stat block and my script in the description for you guys to check out. If you enjoyed that video, you should leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We also have a Facebook group where we discuss video topics and new additions to our community. The link to that group, and other ways to support the channel, are in the description. Thank you to all the mages out there. Until next time, bye-bye.